Wherever you're joining me from in the world today, welcome to the Atelier. I'm really excited about this lesson because we're finally going to be bringing the front and the back of the beautiful swing coat together. We're going to be basting, top stitching, and pick stitching that very, very long side seam. And in addition to that, I'm also going to show you how to baste and fell stitch the side seam lining. There's a lot going on in this lesson, so stick around because that's what's happening today in the Atelier. All right, so we're going to get started putting together the front and back of the jacket here at the side seam, okay? Now, this is going to be rather challenging because we have a lot to work with here, okay? But what the most important thing is that you have to remember we have balance lines, okay? We have balance lines here at the arm side. We have a balance line at the waist. We have a balance line here at, excuse me, the seat and the length, okay? So I'm bringing my left side in here, all right? And I've got my side body sitting here. And here I have, what I'm going to do too is I'm just going to put a few pins. This is the back of my jacket. I'm just going to put a couple of pins here because otherwise this lining is going to keep getting in my way. And that's going to be a no bueno situation, okay? All right. So we have here at the back, we have the bottom of our arm side right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to match up the bottom of my arm side with the top of my under sleeve, or excuse me, like my side body here, okay? Right at the top of my side body, where my side body ends, it kicks over to the back. So, and at the same time, I would like very much to match, as best I can, my plaid. Okay? So we're going to give that a try here. Now, the other thing that we have to keep in mind is that we have no inlay here at all. Okay? So what I like to do is I like to work in very small increments. And this is not going to match a whole lot, but that's okay. I have a little bit of matching here. The issue with matching our jacket at this point is that I have this really hard angle, okay? And so I was able to match it to a certain extent, but unfortunately, because the angle is just so, on the front of the jacket, just so steep, that it just wasn't going to happen the whole way down, okay? So here, I've matched at my waistline, all right? I've matched here at my arm side. Let's get that pinned. Okay, those are the real important ones, okay? And we're matching raw edge to raw edge, all right? There and there, okay? I just want to take a look and make sure that that is going to come together the way I want. Just down a little bit more. It's really important that the arm side come together perfectly because, yeah. Yeah, right there. Okay. Perfect. All right. And then, so what we're going to have to do actually is we're going to have to start sewing here at the bottom, okay? because, but I want to match all of my my balance lines first, okay? So if you're not sure what a balance line is, okay, when you go to draft your jacket or anything, okay, a balance line is each of your horizontal lines that mark a major part of the body. So we have the neckline is a balance line, the shoulder line, okay, the chest, the waist, the seat, the length, those are all balance lines. And it's very important that they all match, because if they don't, you can cause some very serious fitting issues for yourself down the road, which you don't want to do, okay? All right, so here, that's matching, okay. And then here, where's my, here and here, yes. So I'm just going through and matching up all of those major balance lines first, okay? So we don't leave anything to chance. All right. Now, we've got a lot of zha-zhas here, so let's trim a couple of these off so that they're not all of them, but just some of these long ones, because they do tend to be a bit of a hassle. All right. I know, everything is prep. All right. Now, if you want, let's check this one more time. Yeah. That's better. There we go. If you want, you can put a nice line in here for yourself at 1 centimeter, okay? I highly suggest that when you're working on a long piece of cloth like this, okay? Because making sure that you have a 1 centimeter seam throughout is really super important, okay? So I'm just using a little bit of blue chalk because it's almost, as we've talked about, exhaustingly, it's almost impossible to see white chalk. And no one's going to see this blue line because it's on the inside, okay? So I'm just going to do that, chalk that in nicely. I might just put a couple other pins here and there just to keep things behaving themselves. It's a lot to work with, okay? Yes. Okay. So get that nice 1 centimeter seam. And the other thing that's nice about putting a little guideline in for yourself is that you don't have to like you don't have to mess around, to put it nicely, with like, oh, that's not 1 centimeter, you know what I mean? You can just get on with it and do your basting and top stitching and get it done instead of messing around with it. Nobody wants to mess around when it comes to this stuff. Okay, so it's all prep. The better planning, the better the outcome, okay? All right, so let's get the lining out of the way. And here at the bottom, I'll do the same thing. I'll just give myself a little 1 centimeter, okay? All right, okie dokie. We're gonna need a lot of thread for this, yeah? All right, baste, top stitch, and pick stitch. Same old story. Same old story. And this is a lot to do. I'm gonna be here a while. I'm gonna be here for a little while, okay? But that's okay. We're gonna start down here at the bottom. And this is important now. Okay, that we take our time and we you know, our stitches are nice, close together, not too huge. Otherwise, we're not going to have a nice straight seam. And if you're going to put your time and effort into basting, top stitching, and pick stitching a seam of this length, trust me when I tell you, you want to make sure that you get it right, because you don't want to see what I call a zha-zha, right? Now, what is a zha-zha? Well, a zha-zha is like all of a sudden your seam is like straight, 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 and all of a sudden it goes, whoosh. Yeah, it's not what you want to see. All right? You want if you're going to do this, pick stitch it, you want to make sure it's nice and straight. So my stitches here, okay, and I'm holding this in my hand because I don't want to mess around with it. I want to get it basted and top stitched and get pick stitching, yeah? So this gives me the ability to work very, quickly and accurately. All right, so my basting stitches here are about no more than 2 centimeters long and no more than 1.5 centimeters half a centimeter in between the stitch, okay? So they're not tiny, but they're smaller and closer together, which is what we want. And I'm very diligently following my blue guideline, okay? And again, we don't want this to be tight, so every so often, I'll just give this a nice little push. Okay? So we just baste, baste, baste. Baste, baste, baste. It's like the never-ending seam. Just goes on and on and on and on. But accuracy is important, okay? This jacket or coat was fitted on me beautifully by my last couple of in-house students. They did such a wonderful job. They were such good fitters. They really were. I don't think, and I had some really great students, so I'm not ditching anybody, but these two young ladies knew how to fit like rock stars. And they did a beautiful job on fitting my last suit. So I used that suit to make this. We used that pattern and converted it, right? So, all right. Baste, baste, baste. Again, make sure it's not tight. We can take the pins out as we go along as well, because they'll just be a nuisance. Okay. All right. So the basting and top stitching isn't bad. It's the pick stitching. And if you've been watching this series, you know that I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have you watch me pick stitch for like an hour. Because this will probably take me a good hour. Well, maybe not. Maybe 40 minutes or so. But you know what? Here's the deal. Here's what's really important. This is what you should need to keep in mind, okay? When it comes to tailoring, it's not about how fast you get something done, okay? It's about how accurately it's done. Because there's always a technique, and you want to make sure that you're executing the technique properly. See, my problem is I like to see things done. I want to be like, ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at how nice that seam looks. Look at how nice those pick stitches are. Yeah? And so that's my problem. I get very antsy about let's just get it done and so I can see what it looks like. And that's fine. But as long as you're taking your time and you're doing it correctly and you're executing the techniques correctly is what's most important. Because that's why they call this slow sewing, right? There's nothing fast about doing this at all. It's slow sewing. But it's meant to be, and it's meant to be enjoyed. And that's why we do it. If this is why we have tailors, because they enjoy that, enjoy having the cloth in their hands and going about doing it without a machine. It's so much more satisfying. But it does take patience and, you know, patience and persistence and a lot of practice. So, a lot of practice. All right. Okay, so here we are. Let's just make sure we don't have a lot of tightness in this seam, okay? Let's go over it once more before I tack it off. There we go. All right, very good. Tack it. Perfect. Okay. All right. Now, we're going to open this up, right? And again, we want to make sure we're moving the lining out of the way, okay? So we're going to open this up, make sure everything looks okie dokie, which it does. Very good. My arm side looks okay. I'm going to just move that over slightly there. Just slightly. That'll be okay. All right. So now, top stitching. I want the back of the jacket to overlap the side body. That's what I want. So I'm going to top stitch it in that fashion. Okay? That's how I'm going to top stitch it in that fashion. So here, it's going to go like that. So again, I'm going to grab a little bit more thread than that. And we'll get to it. Now again, the thing that is really important to remember when you're top stitching, okay, is that you want to stay a couple millimeters off of the seam because we have to leave room for ourselves to pick stitch, okay? And the pick stitch takes place right at the seam, okay? Right at the seam. And what we want to do as we are basting, top stitching if you will, is open this up enough so you can see your stitches, your first set of stitches, okay? You don't want to stretch it open, but it's like anything else. What you're doing is you're opening up the seam. And also make sure that you don't have any lining in the way. All right, so here, if you can see, all right, I'm going to just open that up a little bit and then come in here and baste. Now my basting stitches are a little bit smaller, okay? Again, I don't want them to be tight, but they are a little bit smaller, okay? Because I do want, this is a really long seam, and I want to make sure that I don't have a lot of zhazhas happening. I want this seam to be straight as a pin, okay? Now as soon as I can get in here a little bit, it's always advantageous, it's a lot, okay, to come in and use your hand, your finger and your thumb here. Your finger and your first finger, okay, and your thumb to open the seam. Can you see? Let me turn this like this so you can see it, okay? So I'm opening the seam with my thumb and my forefinger, okay? And then I'm coming in here and basting. So this is the best way to do it to maintain the nice straight, a nice straight seam, okay? So you don't have any zhazhas. So that's all I'm doing, is I'm just using my forefinger and my thumb to open those up. I'm keeping my stitches small and close together, okay? So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm taking like, 3 or 4 stitches at a time. And of course I'll go through and make sure that nothing is tight before I tack this off. But this, if you're going to be working, doing handwork, this is the most efficient way to go about doing it, is holding it in your hand, not laying it flat. Sometimes you have to work on the board, as they say. Okay, sometimes you have to, but in this particular case, you don't. And like I said, I know you really can't see what I'm doing, but you've seen me do this enough now that I think you understand. This is no different than what we did a couple videos ago when we basted, top stitched and pick stitched the center back seam, right? Same exact thing we're doing here. This is just a lot of real grunt work, I guess you would call it. But, and again, listen, if you wanted to do this on the machine, go for it. If you're a machine person, I would say the best thing to do would be baste it together real nice, so that the machine, so it sits nice on the machine. It doesn't get all pushed around or gunked up. This is a long seam to sew. So I would definitely baste it. Give yourself a nice guideline, okay? And then get on the machine. I just can't. And you know what? I'll tell you what else. I just love that, really, this beautiful top stitch. I love having the seam overlain like that. It just looks so nice. It really does. It really, really does. You can't beat it. So, you can't beat it with a stick, my friend. All right. Now, the other nice thing is, once we get all of this basted and top stitched, and pick stitched, what happened here? Okay. We can turn up the length, which is going to be great. We're going to turn the length up, and I'm going to show you, because we're going to blind stitch that. And that's I like doing a blind stitch. So I'm going to introduce you to, yet again, a new stitch, which will be lovely. Okay. So I'm going to, almost down to the bottom here, and I'm going to start doing a bit of pick stitching. And of course, I'll post the pick stitch video in the top corner. Or is it that corner? Whichever corner it comes up in. Cue the card. And if you don't know how to pick stitch and you just tuned into this video for the first time, you can see exactly what this little pick stitch is all about, because it's such a teeny weeny little stitch, you can't see me doing it. No matter how hard we could try, okay? You just will not be able to see this stitch. It's that little. So I have a pick stitching video out there that you can look at that shows you how to do it. And it magnifies. It got my camera right up super close, okay? So you can take a look at that. All right, so I'm almost down to the bottom here. And we are almost finished, finitoed. Now the next thing that we have to do once we have this basted top stitch is we have to take our first stitches out, okay? And we do that because we want to make sure that they don't get caught in our pick stitches, because you'll never ever get the baste out, okay? So here, let me just tack this down here at the bottom now. Goodness gracious. And before I tack it completely, all right, oh, this will be interesting. Let's see. Just so much. Let's see if I can push it like this. Yeah. Let's see, I'll grab it this way. We want to get all that tightness out, yeah? So if I just bring it like so, there we go. Get all that tightness out. There we go. That's better. That's good. Okay. That's really super important. Make sure you always do that. Okay? Make sure you always do that. All right. Goodness gracious. Now, let's come back under here and we will find our first baste, which is right here. Okay? I believe that's my first baste. Yes. Let's just double check. Yes. All right. We'll get this first baste out quickly. All right. Quickly. Yeah. Let's see. All right, there we go. That makes life easy. All right, so now what I'm going to do before I get started pick stitching is I'm going to give this a really nice press, okay? So I can ensure that my beautiful seam that I just spent all that time putting in is nice and flat to work with, okay? So I'm just going to put a little bit of water on my seam and just press it down. Real nice. Okay. Make sure it's dry, all right? It's really important. All right. Careful too, as you're doing this, that you don't get water on your lining. If it's, you know, like my lining, get like a big water stain. It's the worst. So anytime you're working with lining, always take a piece and test it. Put a little drop of water on it, press it off with your iron. If it leaves a stain, then you got to be really careful, okay? Not all linings will do that, but a lot of them do. So I won't be able to wear my swing coat in the rain. I don't think I'd want to anyway, right? We do get rain in Dallas, but it's not like a ton, like in the spring and the fall mostly. But it's not a real rainy place. Now here I'm going to put water on it because it's just my lining support. We won't see it. All right, beautiful, beautiful. Make sure that's nice and dry. Looks good. Okay, now I'll turn it back over. You can see there's just a lot of coat. Yeah, There's a lot of coat. Where am I? The heck did it go? There it is. Where's my seam? All right. 1 second. I just had to reach across the table and get my beautiful hand silk. So we're going to use hand silk to do this, okay? We're going to also use a smaller needle. In fact, I have a little, this won't be enough, okay? So we're going to use a smaller needle, and we do that to make sure that we can work nice and quick, nice and agile, okay? Sometimes, oh God, I can't see anything. My eyes are getting old. There we go. The thread can be sometimes a little difficult to thread because it's a little thick. So cut it at an angle, the end, yeah, that's what I do. Okay, so we have to press this off and get all of the wax off of here, okay? We don't want that wax on our garment. So let's do that a couple of times. And we'll get to pick stitching. All right? Okay. So again, I'm starting here at the top. I've got the actual fold away from me so I can work with it. And I'm just going to start here and I'm just going to tack this a couple of times. We won't see this. This will be hidden in our sleeve seam, okay? So I'm just going to tack this 2 or 3 times just to make sure it doesn't open up on me. All right, and now here I can start pick stitching. So the pick stitch, what I'm doing is I'm coming, the thread that has come out here, okay, I'm coming over next to it close to the seam and just coming forward a couple millimeters. So I'm just a couple millimeters off of the seam, okay, and then when I come in real close to my last stitch and I come forward a couple millimeters. So the stitch is really close. Okay, this is a really close stitch because it's got to hold our seam together, right? So it has to be, you want it to be right on the edge of the seam, okay? And very close together. So eventually here, as I get a little bit behind me, I can pick this up and work with it in my hand and work much, much faster than I am right now. But I need to get a little thread behind me first, okay? So here's the deal. I'm going to keep working away, and when I come back, I'm going to actually, here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put together this seam, and I'm going to put together the other one as well, because it's exactly the same thing. There's no difference, okay? And when I come back, I'm going to show you how to baste the shoulders. Okay, so now that I have basically pick stitched my little fingers to the bone, it's time to do, you know what, press. We're going to press out this seam. So I've done both sides of my swing coat now. So I've basted, top stitched, and pick stitched both side seams, okay, where the side body and the back of the swing coat come together, all right? So now let's go ahead and press this seam out real nice, okay? That's the next thing. We always press, 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 right? And like I did before, I'm just giving this seam a little bit of a pull because the hand silk tends to just ravel up a little bit. It seems that no matter how hard I try not to you know, pull it, you get a little bit of tension there. So I'm not trying to stretch anything. I'm just giving the seam a little bit of a pull, okay? Just to help that thread to loosen up a little bit, if you will, okay? Fantastic. And so I put, you know, when I do this, I'm putting a fair amount of water on the seam. Yeah. And making sure that everything's laying nice and flat, okay? That my seam is flat, doesn't have it, you know, it's not like wrinkled up or folding over itself at all. That's really important. We don't want any unnecessary thickness coming through on the outside. All right. Fantastic. Now, I know before I left you to come back, to finish this and come back, I said we were going to start working on the shoulders, but I kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that, to be honest with you. And what we have to do before we can start in on the shoulders is, first of all, we need to baste and fell stitch this lining down, okay? Now, normally I would wait to fell stitch until the very end, and I do, but I like to take advantage of our situation here where we don't have the shoulders put together yet, all right? We're gonna fell stitch, in fact, where the back of the jacket and the side body come together is the only place, only seam, I should say, on the lining that isn't sewn on the machine. We actually have to fell stitch it, okay? And I find it's much, 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 much easier to come in and fell stitch this before everything's closed up, because I can stick a ruler in between the cloth and the lining and actually baste and pick stitch that lining very easily that way. Not pick stitch, excuse me, fell stitch, okay? Because the one thing we don't want to do is we don't want to get the fell stitch caught in the cloth, okay? We want to be able to fell stitch the lining independently, all right? So that we don't have any pulling on the outside of the jacket. So I'm going to show you how to do that because it's really important. And you're going to learn the fell stitch, which is so exciting because you'll be using the fell stitch quite a bit in finishing, all right? So we're going to get these side seams made up and get this fell stitching done today. And then let's see how we're feeling. Maybe what I'll do is we'll add in turning up the hem as well, because we have to turn this whole hem up. But we may end up doing that in a separate lesson because it's a lot, be a lot. All right? Okay. So here we have, okay. All right, so in doing this, I highly recommend, okay, that you work on an elevated surface, okay? So I'm going to use the baby, okay? And what I'm doing now, excuse me, get a couple of these little threads out of here. Okay. So what I'm doing is I've got my lining. This is the back. Just got a little bit of water. Hope I didn't stain that. Goodness. Goodness, no stains, please. We've worked so hard. All right, so we have the back. I think we'll be okay. We have the back lining here, okay? I'm just going to press that down a little bit because it got a little folded up as I was pick stitching, okay? All right. Got a lot of coat here. And just so you can see, let me show you what we're going for here, okay? So here is the seam that I basted up on the other side, okay? I basted that all up, all the way down to the bottom. Okay, so that's what we're going for here, okay? Just lay this out. All right. try to keep the coat up on the table here. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to take the lining from the side body, okay, here. I'll just bring that up a little bit more so it's not dragging. There we go. What we don't want is we don't want this pulling, okay? Because remember, we added ease, right? Remember, we added ease to the front lining. And I told you when we were adding that ease, we had to continue distributing the ease, horizontally, okay, across the jacket, right? So whatever ease I put in to start with here, I have to carry that through. And that is true all the way to our side seam here, okay? Makes sense, I hope, yeah? So the one thing, so we got that. The other thing is when I sew this or when I fell stitch this, okay, I want to make sure that I'm folding this back and I'll be, let's see here. Let me just check something. Yeah. What I want to make sure of is that when I fold this back and I start top stitching this, okay, or pressing it, sorry, basting it down, all right, that I'm doing so on the seam. Okay, here's my seam right here. So I can feel that, all right, I can feel that. So what I want to do here, okay, because I'm going to be putting a ruler between the cloth and the lining. So what I want to do here is I just want to come in with my chalk, okay, and I want to chalk my seam so I know where to fold my lining. I hope that makes sense, okay? If it doesn't, it will in a second, I promise. All right, so again, I'm just smoothing out. Let's pay attention to that first. I'm just smoothing out the lining on the back, okay? And I'm just chalking in approximately where my seam is. I can feel it very distinctly, okay? There's a lot of coat here, all right? And then here, let's press this out a little bit because it got a little wrinkly when we were working, okay? Let's just press that nice. I think that'll do okay. It's got a nice big, yeah, that'll be okay. We'll deal with the rest of that later. We just want it to be flat. All right. And so here I'm just going to bring the chalk. It's like I said, it's rough. It doesn't have to be, perfect here, just so I know where I'm going with everything. Okay. So there's that. And now if I come back down here to the bottom, let's get that out of the way. Need a lot of table here, okay? So here I come back down to the bottom. And here is where that should be. Okay. So now what I can do is I can grab my ruler, yeah, and put that there, like so. And then take, it's a lot. There's a lot here. Take and fold my lining here up and under like so, okay? And just fold it right on that line, ensuring, of course, that I'm not pulling this, okay? Because remember, I only left like a centimeter of lining here, okay? So I shouldn't have a whole lot that I'm folding under, okay? So let's see, can you see what I'm doing? You can. All right, very good. Right there you can. All right. I know this is a lot to work with. It's like I feel like it's like I'm going to be basting with my arms extended. But when you have a lot of coat like we do here, right, it is a little bit to manage. It is a little bit to manage. That's okay. We will do it. We will get it done. All right? So again, the other thing we have to remember is we have a waistline here, okay? And this extends out. So our waist kind of comes in like this and then down, right? And so when we're working with this, we have to kind of fold the top from the waist up over a little bit to straighten this out, okay? And that's really important because I told you I don't want this to be pulled at all, okay? I know exactly where this area needs to be. This is what I basted down originally, right? And so I want to make sure, because this is kind of coming up and over, that I'm not going to have any tightness here, okay? It's really important. So here I told you we're only going to fold this back about 1 centimeter. That's it, okay? And I'm going to start basting this down here. Here, you see my little slit here, remember? That's where my length is. So I can match that with the length right there. That should match. Okay? Absolutely it should. And here I can start basting right down at the bottom. Okay? I have it back about 1 centimeter. So let's see how this all works out. That damn silt out of my way. Always a problem. Okay, so here again, so we want to respect the amount of ease that we had put in as well. Okay, make sure that that ease is there. So it's a little jiggly to start with, and of course it's not easy to work with when you've got slippery lining sitting on a slippery ruler, but we'll manage. We will manage. Okay, so again, I'm just folding this back that 1 centimeter and basting in a real nice straight line. That's all I'm doing. Yeah, can use my needle to come in and just straighten out that lining a bit. There we go. So it's all all hands and fingers on deck here. Yeah. The non-working hand is getting a bit of a workout today, for sure. Okay? But this is important because, like I said, it's one of those situations where if you don't get this basted and sewn now, you're just going to have a heck of a time doing it later, right? And when you're trying to finish, trying to baste and fell stitch this without grabbing any lining is, or without grabbing any cloth underneath is really, really hard, really hard. So I just like to get it out of the way now. And then I don't have to mess around with it. Unless I get a knot. Come here, you little Dickens. There we go. Okay. Let me move this down a little bit now. Move my ruler in. Make sure we're all good. Looks like it. Maintaining the amount of ease that I put in. So I'm not pulling it. Okay, I'm just watching where that ease is to make sure that I'm not seeing any ripples go one way or another. Okay, just going to move this a little bit closer and pull this a little bit up and on. There we go. That's going to be a little bit better now. I don't have quite so much as I did at the bottom. Okay. My goodness gracious. Yeah, that's about right. It's one of those situations, very honestly, that you just have to be patient and take your time. This is not one of those steps that you want to rush, because if you don't get it correct, or if you don't get it right, you're going to have some pulling in your lining on the inside, and you certainly do not want that. Not after all the time and effort we've put in to putting this lining in, right? I mean, so far we've done a pretty good job in the front and the back, right? You don't want to mess it up on the side seam. So just take your time. And all will be well, as they say. All will be well. Again, I'm just being careful not to fold back too much. I don't want it to pull. It's just about 1 centimeter is what we left. Maybe a tiny bit more than 1 centimeter, but that's okay, because that'll just give us a tiny bit more ease, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with having a little bit more ease. Okay. There we go. Careful here. Right? Okay. It's almost like you can almost see exactly where this ease wants to go. You see? It just kind of tells you, if you have it, if you have the right amount folded back, that 1 centimeter, it just kind of tells you this is where the ease is. Let the cloth talk to you. Talk to me, baby, talk to me. Help me, help me. So just take a little bit at a time. Don't rush it. Don't try and boil in the ocean, as my husband says. Yeah? Just take a little bit. Work on what's right in front of you first, and it'll all get done. Yeah. Don't like that. No, 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 no. Let's get that tightness out. I'll get it out all at the end, okay? We'll get that out at the end. Okay. Go here. Like so. All right. Oh, dear, 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 dear. Not paying attention to my thread. There we go. Okay, this last little bit right up here, let's see what we're doing here. Okay, last little bit right here. Should all be perfect. Yeah, all right. Very good. Oh, for Pete's sakes, Marlene. There we go. There we go. right up to this point. Now this little bit of excess that I have left over, don't worry about that. Remember, we cut our lining a little bit longer around the arm side. Can you guys see? Well, I'm almost off camera here. Let me turn this over so you can see this very end here. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You can see me there. So this little bit here that we have left over, don't worry about that. This bit here. Yeah. That is going to eventually be trimmed away. We have a lot of excess lining here that we left just for the reason that we're using it now, right? To leave that little bit of extra ease. So don't worry about that. When we start the 9,000 steps of putting a sleeve in, okay, one of these steps will be trimming the excess lining away. All right. Okay, and I'm just going to tack this a couple of times because it seems as if this loves to come undone. All right, so now let's get all the way back down here again, okay? The very, very bottom. Now that that all is basted, or yeah, beautifully. You know what, let me just make sure I don't have too much tightness here. I said I was going to pull that a little bit and I didn't do it. So let me get in here and just pull this through. Make sure all is well. Yeah? Do have a little bit of tightness, so we'll just, there we go. That's better. Okay. Oh my goodness gracious. Let's fix this up here. Let's get this nice. Yeah? Bring this here right in front of me so you guys can see what I'm about to do next. About to pull a rabbit out of my hat. All right, look, we're gonna fell stitch. And isn't this just so convenient? I can just take this right off my wall here. All right, we're gonna fell stitch this. Now, again, because, you know, fell stitching is, it's very small and I'm using red thread. So you're gonna have a tough time seeing what I'm doing here. So as always, I'm going to assist you by putting a video right here on how to fell stitch. So there should be a little card popping up and you can hit that and watch a video on how to fell stitch. Fell stitching is used to bring together your lining. Okay, here, two pieces of lining like this. Here in the front of the jacket too, we're going to be fell stitching all this. It can be done a couple different ways of fell stitch, okay? Some people, when they fell stitch, they like to hide the stitch completely so it's not seen at all, okay? And other tailors like to do just like a very decorative, if you would, a little decoration on the edge where you might just see a tiny little blip, okay? Or a little dot, if you would, right on the edge of your lining. Either way is completely fine, okay? If you want to hide it completely, you can. I personally don't mind seeing a little bit of a dot. I think it looks kind of cool. I think it adds a little, like I said, a little decoration to the lining itself. One isn't any more difficult than the other, to be honest with you. So really quick too, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to press this. And I'll probably press it again a little bit more as I go, just to give myself a nice straight line to work with, okay? Okay. Thread, got the thimble, got the superhero, right? And again, now what we're gonna do is put our ruler back under here, okay? So just at the very, 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 very bottom, I'm just going to tack this off a couple of times, okay? Just gonna tack it off, just to make sure that it's nice and secure, okay? Don't want that to bunch up, not too tight, all right? Okay, So now, when you're doing a fell stitch, I'm going to bring this really to the edge here, okay? And I'll explain it to you. The fell stitch, what I'm doing, when I bring my needle through, okay, I am actually catching the very, very edge of the fold, okay? So my needle is coming out right on the fold of the lining, okay? So that's the first stitch right there, okay, starting it out. Then what I'm doing is I'm bringing my needle right underneath that stitch that I just pulled out, grabbing the lining underneath, and then just coming forward a couple of millimeters, like 2 or 3 millimeters at the most, okay? And again, just grabbing the very fold of the lining. So the entire stitch, with the exception of if I wanted to see just that little dot right there, okay, the rest of the stitch is hidden underneath. So that's kind of how the fell stitch works, okay? It's pretty cool. And like I said, you can choose if you want, I'm gonna move this kind of center again. If you want to see just a little tiny dot, you can, by just keeping your needle, instead of going completely under the cloth, you just go under just a tiny bit, okay? So I like to do that. And so you always want to make sure that you're coming exactly where you came out. You're coming back. Your needle is going in just slightly behind that first stitch that you pulled out, and then you're coming forward and just coming through on the edge, okay? That's it. That's the fell stitch in a nutshell. Pretty simple. And if you watch the video on how to do the fell stitch, which I will put up for you, you'll see I do it with a contrasting color, so it's a little bit easier to see than what I'm doing here, okay? All right, so I've got my work cut out for me here. I'm going to fell stitch, okay, all the way up. What are some things to keep in mind when you're fell stitching? Well, obviously, you do not want your stitch to be tight like anything else, okay? You want it to be nice and, your spacing consistent. At some point, I should be able to get my hand underneath here, which is rare for fell stitching. Normally, when you're fell stitching on the flat or on the board like I am here, okay? But in this particular case, because nothing is attached up here, at some point I'm going to be able to get my hand in here and maybe go through and fell stitch a little faster. We'll see. But for now, I'm working on the board, as they say in London, on the row. All right. Not really. If I was working on the board, I'd be flat, but I guess I got the ruler, so we could say the same. Yeah. Always have the baby. Always. Baby's good for working on. Okay. So this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is the only seam lining, okay, seam that is sewn by hand, if you will, okay? I shouldn't say that. That's kind of a lie, because we will sew the shoulder seams by hand on the inside of the jacket with the lining. Do the same thing. We'll fell stitch them. So I guess when it comes to the body of the jacket and what we're putting together. So that's that. All right, so I'm going to keep just working away here and show you what it all looks like when I get back. So I went ahead and I fell stitched the center seam here, okay, or the side seam, excuse me. So that matches up perfectly with the side seam on the jacket, all right? So if we turn this over this way, all right, you can see I've got this lovely seam with some fuzzies that's running down the whole side of our beautiful jacket here. So you can see how pick stitching gives you this really lovely kind of like, you know, the seam is a little up. It's not just open. So it's a really beautiful effect rather than just, you know, machining it and then opening the seam. This adds a little bit more depth to the style lines, if you will, in your design. So that's why I love going through. Oh yeah, just love spending hours pick stitching, which this kind of was. It was kind of a long time. So at this point, our jacket is beautiful, beautifully put together. What we need to do next, before we get into collars and sleeves, is we're just going to go ahead and turn up the hem. All right, we have to get that taken care of. And then we also have to put together our shoulder seams. So a couple more lessons involved here before we get to the good stuff, which I'm looking forward to. So I'll see you in the next lesson on that. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you found value in this lesson, please do like, share, and subscribe. Also with other tailoring and sewing enthusiasts. They might find as much value in this lovely channel as you have, and I appreciate it. And in my next lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to baste and blind stitch our hem as well as turning up the lining. You won't want to miss it. That's what's happening next time in the atelier.